What's poppin' YouTube? Today we're going to be going over the top 14 sourcing methods here. It's a little bit of a sourcing methods tier list. These are going to be like the 14 main ones that you hear from all the different YouTubers. So let's just get right into it here. First one, we've got a fan favorite, Goodwill. Everyone's always talking about Goodwill. If you've been to any kind of reselling channels comment section, you'll hear everyone dumping on Goodwill. They have some really bad prices from time to time. They can be quite expensive, but it's not really, it doesn't cover all. It does really heavily depend on your location and the manager, and yeah, you might find the ones near you might be good, but it honestly heavily depends. So honestly, I think I'd say B or C. It'll go B tier. I mean, if you find the right ones, you'll be just as good off as any other thrift store, but also at the same time, sourcing individual items isn't a very good idea. I mean, you can do it as like a good side hustle, but if you're trying to make like a full-time income on eBay, you're not going to do it by sourcing individual items. I mean, it's just not possible. It takes up so much of your time. You might go into a Goodwill and search there for an hour or 2 hours and walk out with 6 good items with a high sell-through rate. So it's going B tier, because honestly there is definitely a good quality of individual sourcing, which is getting to learn the market, getting to learn the items. Because if you go in there and even just per day you check out 2 or 3 shelves, look them up on eBay, check the sell-through rate, after a while you'll be able to just walk in there and you don't really need to look up. I mean, you still look stuff up, but you don't need to look up everything, because you already know what the garbage is, you already know what's good, so you can immediately pick out the good stuff and then look up everything else. So it's a good starting point, but you're not going to make a ton of money doing it, maybe a few hundred a week. Alright, next we have drop shipping. This might be kind of a hot take, but honestly, I'm not a big fan of drop shipping. It's going to have to go D tier. Not everyone might agree with this, because, the drop shipping model, the whole idea is you don't even have to handle the product. You go on a site like Alibaba, AliExpress, or even on eBay itself, and you just send the product directly to your customer without ever seeing it. Now, the reason why I've put drop shipping in D tier, even though it might be a little bit of a hot take for some people, and maybe this was the first business you started, I've certainly tried this model before, and it's got a lot of issues. It seems great from the outside when someone on social media is telling you that you should start a Shopify store, selling cheap stuff from China, but it has a lot of issues. For one, you're paying the absolute highest cost of goods possible. That's not great. 2, there's zero quality control of the product. You'd never see the product, so there's no way to know what you're actually sending out. And 3, returns are just a nightmare. They're basically impossible, because the return address is not going to be an address you control. To be honest, within this tier list, I should have included factory wholesale, because that's actually, if you want to sell cheap stuff from China, honestly the best way to go about it easily is to go on a site like Alibaba and just find a good product and just order a lot of it, and your cost of goods is going to be way lower. You control the inventory. It doesn't take 3 months for the customer to receive the item, so it's just a much better option, and it would actually work. That was one of the first ways I got started on eBay, was just doing exactly that, and it worked way better than everyone else that was trying to drop ship. Alright, next up is liquidation. So I call this one the Mark Tilbury special. If you guys watch Mark Tilbury, probably one of the only influencers online that doesn't sell a lifestyle, I don't think. He's one of my favorite British people. Anyway, liquidation, if you're not familiar, is just the concept of a company going out of business and they're quickly trying to sell everything they have. They're liquidating. So it's a pretty good sourcing method. In my opinion, any good sourcing method is one where people are trying to get rid of stuff fast, because that's where you can get your lowest cost of goods. They're not going to pick through the inventory and find all the stuff that is a lot more valuable sold individually. They just don't have time to do that. So liquidation, S tier, easily. The only problem I'd say that there is with liquidation is actually finding them, because I mean, only so many companies go out of business within a certain time span. But if you really look for them, you could make an entire income just off that alone. But I just find them when I can, personally. Alright, next up, this is a pretty underrated sourcing method. It's not even, I don't really consider it much of a sourcing method, but sometimes I just find stuff. I'm kind of a garbage man, so I like to just find free stuff. A little bit of a hoarder, but you kind of have to be if you're in this business. So yeah, sourcing out of a dumpster, you'd be surprised. Now you're probably thinking, that's kind of nasty. Why would I want to get items out of a dumpster? What buyer wants to buy things out of a dumpster? But they don't know that, right? So an example here, I brought an example. I was getting some boxes at the Golf Galaxy. I didn't want to buy these like 40-inch long boxes off a Uline. I needed them right away. So I usually just go there and get them out of their dumpster. And they just had boxes of these things. 41 of these club covers, still in the case, or still in the plastic. They go for like $14.95 shipped. But I mean, it's not a lot, but times that by 41. That's a good amount of money, considering my cost of goods was 0. So I'd say A tier for this one. It's pretty good. I mean, don't rely on it. Consider yourself lucky if you even find stuff in there. I mean, for some people, dumpster diving is an activity. They like to go do it, and I kind of feel them. I've found a lot of goodies out of there. I've found mini fridges. I've found printers. I found the club covers. I mostly just get boxes, though. Like, if I'm sourcing out of a dumpster, the reason why is because I went to go get boxes, and then I just so happened to find stuff. Alright, next up is going to be, it's not a very clear picture here, but that's a picture of the clearance aisle at Walmart. Retail arbitrage. So, honestly, you hear about this one a lot. A lot of influencers talk about retail arbitrage, and it can be very lucrative. The advantage with retail arbitrage is that you can go and find like 300 of an item that sells well. You can go in there and find stuff for dirt cheap. And some people even, they have entire channels just dedicated to going to Marshall's, TJ Maxx, Ross, and they just flip it on FBA or flip it on eBay. I've always had trouble with FBA just because of the gating system, but that's just kind of a me issue. I haven't figured it out well enough yet. I've just stuck with eBay and Mercari. But anyway, honestly, it's going to go B tier. This might be a little bit of a hot take, but in my opinion, I think that sourcing retail arbitrage, it's really good. The advantages of it are that you get new items every single time, so the return risk is very little. Your cost of goods is pretty guaranteed. You can go onto the websites, you can go onto the Walmart website or the Target website, and you can see exactly what you're going to pay. So it's pretty easy to scout it out. But at the same time, if you're going to stores in person, don't expect to find anything, because I feel like it's a lot harder to find stuff this way. I feel like you spend a lot more time on retail arbitrage, and to be honest, I think that the best way of going about it is chasing trends on social media. Like if a TikTok influencer shows off something, like an example is like the cookie stools, I'll put a picture up on screen. you know, some influencer had them on TikTok, and then they kind of became a trend. So then people were going to Home Goods and buying them for, oh, I don't even remember because I didn't get any. They were out by the time I showed up, but you know, people were selling them for over $100, like $150 for these things. So, I mean, it can be really good, but you gotta be fast about it. You gotta get there early, and you gotta be on top of the trends. So it's just never really been my thing personally, but it's, you know, it's pretty good. All right, my pictures are not great today. That next picture, if it's hard to tell, is just of like a bulk lot. So, I mean, I guess my categories aren't very good here either because we have eBay and we also have bulk lots, and you know, the best way to get lots is probably either eBay or Facebook. But so yeah, bulk lots, honestly, they've got to go S tier. I guess this just more means bulk lots in general, so then we won't cover those in the next sections. But anywhere you can get a bulk lot, whether that's Facebook or eBay or Craigslist or anywhere else, whatnot maybe. They're a much more reliable sourcing method in my opinion. You can get a lot of items, and you might end up with a lot of garbage. I mean, the method is really, for bulk lots, you just want some of your items to cover all of your cost, and then everything on top of that is gravy. So, you know, it's a S tier sourcing method. The most amount of money I've made on eBay has been from bulk lots, easily. So, and you save a lot of time too. Like compared to like all these other methods, these are individual sourcing methods, right? Except, I mean, I guess retail arbitrage has some exceptions to that, but honestly, like in general, if you're not sourcing bulk, then don't expect to make a full-time income. That's the biggest thing. All right, next up is estate sales. My pictures are getting a little better here. Estate sales are pretty good. I mean, kind of similar to, you know, thrift stores where you're getting individual items. You know, you're going in person to find these things. You know, you can't, I mean, sometimes you can get pictures online, like they'll take pictures of all the items they have out on certain websites, but honestly, estate sales, I'm gonna go A tier for that one. And the reason why is because I feel like you can usually get a better deal at these. You can find a lot of good stuff, especially if you go early, if you go right when it opens, because you know, these people, they're trying to get rid of all their stuff as soon as possible. You know, they don't want to hold on to this stuff unless, you know, maybe someone else is making them sell it, but you know, someone in their house. But it's always, I think it's a good sourcing method, and you can usually, most of the time you can bargain. I mean, sometimes they're firm on price, but I think most of the time you can get a good deal. And I've found the most amount of luck at estate sales and garage sales bundling. If you buy a lot of stuff, you can almost always negotiate for a better deal. So that's a good way to go about it. So for that reason, it's A tier. Alright, next up is going to be thrift stores. Now you're probably thinking, well, you know, why did you put that in there? You already have Goodwill right here, right? But honestly, Goodwill is kind of in its own category. Because, I mean, yeah, chain thrift stores exist, but Goodwill's on its own, because unless you find like a good store, which I feel like reasonably priced Goodwills are more rare.
What the hell? Oh my God, no way.
Like, I only know of one of them within, you know, 10 miles of me. Any other thrift store you go to, especially locally owned ones, or even just any of the other chains that aren't Goodwill, you're always going to find a better price. So I'll go A tier, just slightly above Goodwill. Now, you know, this probably seems a little redundant right here, right? We got, you know, Goodwill is a thrift store, right? And, you know, you wouldn't be wrong. It is a thrift store. They're both thrift stores. Technically, these are redundant, but Goodwill is kind of in its own category because, you know, for a few reasons. I feel like at most of them, their prices tend to be higher. I mean, you can find a few good things here and there, but you might find like 10 good items and only like 2 of them are reasonably priced. For that reason, it's in its own category, and also Goodwill is known to just pick off all the good items. Like, they're literally having their employees price check things, and then they put it aside, and it goes to their online auction site, Shop Goodwill. If you're going to Shop Goodwill and you're trying to find things that are like really desirable, like stuff that you're going to make multiple hundreds on for a flip, don't expect to get it at a reasonable price. Like, if it's really desirable, there's going to be a lot of bidders on there. I only look at one location that actually participates in that, so your experience might be different. It might be worth mentioning that basically everything I say here is subjective. Your situation might be entirely different in your location, so it's not, what I'm saying isn't exactly, it's not the Bible. Experience sourcing in Northwest Ohio. That's about it. Alright, next up, we've got a pretty untapped sourcing method, in my opinion, is lost and found. You probably haven't heard of this one very much, but you can, if you go to big buildings, like places like casinos or hotels or things like that, if they don't already donate all their lost and found on a fixed period, like some of them, they'll donate their lost and found every quarter or so if no one comes back for it. But sometimes they just have an accumulation of stuff, and then so you can really get a good price, and you tend to find a lot of good things in there. Some of the the inventory out of this sourcing method is quite valuable. AirPods are a big one, jewelry, glasses, bags. You can find a lot of really valuable stuff, and the people working there, they're not checking anything. They're just going to give you some kind of low fixed price for it, and so it's a pretty valuable and underrated sourcing method, but you just got to find the right spots. And so honestly, for this one, I'm going to go A tier. Reason for it going into A tier is because the inventory is quite valuable, but you're not going to get a ton of it, and it's not a very reliable sourcing method. I mean, if you can establish a relationship with your local, wherever your lost and founds are, then it's pretty good. But again, you're not going to get that much stuff, and some of it will just be junk too. I mean, you're not always going to get a treasure trove of things, but you might. Alright, next up, one of my personal favorites here, probably everyone's personal favorite, because it's really good. Facebook Marketplace. I mean, this should be one of your starting points as a reseller, to be honest. I feel like this is like one of the most obvious ones, because things on Facebook do just tend to go for less, get a better price than when you have the entire United States looking at the listings versus like your county or something, And so, easy S tier, great place to get lots, great place to get individual items. You can get them the same day. You don't have to pay for shipping. You can negotiate. I mean, it's got it all, honestly. You can get anything on Facebook. So, S tier. Alrighty, next one is a classic. Everyone knows this one as well. Garage sales. Garage sales are fire. Especially if you're in an area like they might have a dedicated time to go to them, or sometimes you can go to them every weekend, depending on where you're at. And even if you're not in a good area for garage sales, you can just go to a good area for garage sales. You can look up the income map and figure out where the highest income is, and do that. You can just go to those places because they got disposable income. They don't really care getting rid of a few good flips. So this one's going to go A tier. Reason why is because you are sourcing individual items. So I mean, again, you're not gonna get away with a ton of inventory unless you get lucky, but you'll find good stuff, and you can negotiate, and there's no problem having your phone looking stuff up. I mean, it's easy to look things up. You can handle the item. Similarly to estate sales, these people just want these items gone. So, they'll give you a good deal on it, especially if you negotiate. Next one is eBay. Now, this one might not make a ton of sense because the video is best sourcing methods for eBay. So, why would one of the sourcing methods be eBay if you're going to sell on eBay? Well, it's pretty simple. Is because there's a lot of ways you can go about this, right? You can find lots. Lots are really good on eBay, especially if you sort by newly listed. You'll find some good deals. There's approximately 2.4 billion listings on eBay. So, out of some of those, some of them are going to have mistakes. Sellers mess up their listings all the time. They'll have bad titles, they'll have bad pictures, they'll have no item specifics. Or maybe even their listing is just misleading. Maybe they use sell one like this and they just didn't change anything, and so it's conflicting, and then buyers don't want to possibly have to deal with a return when they could just go to the next listing and buy that and be more comfortable. So, it's pretty easy. You can look for typos. Lots are really good. Sometimes, people just underprice stuff. There's so much that goes into a listing. Even if you have, a perfect listing with good pictures, if you're at half the price of the market, even just that alone, you might think, oh, someone's going to snatch that up. But that's not true, actually, because buyers tend to assume if you're listing so low, even if your condition is used, then they're going to assume, it's half of the market price. Why is that? There must be something wrong with it. And, eBay has a generous returns policy, so it's pretty easy to source on there. It's honestly probably one of the best methods, and so for that reason it's going S tier. And it's very underrated too. A lot of people don't think about it, but just in general, it's just a really good way to get items, especially lots. Lots are the best. There's a lot of people that like to buy lots of broken stuff and fix it. Sometimes things just simply need quick fixes, and then they're good to go. First ways I got started on eBay was literally just buying lots of broken laptops and then just putting components in them, or whatever. Most of the time it was simple issues, and then I'd have a lot of money after because now I have a bunch of working condition stuff. If you learn how to fix something, if you learn the ins and outs of even just something simple like JBL speakers or any electronic for that matter, you can just buy lots of it on eBay and flip it, fix it and flip it. So, really good sourcing method there. I'm actually going to skip over this one. We'll save this one for last because it's easily the most overlooked and it's very ambiguous from the picture. But e-recyclers, easy S tier. If you can get connections with local e-recyclers in your area, and you're an electronics reseller like me, do it. It's a really good, because they just have so much stuff and their entire job is to get rid of this stuff. They have people donating stuff all the time. Their cost basis is literally zero, and sometimes you can even just go into their trash and find stuff. If you need further proof of this, I literally found this Panasonic Toughbook FZ55 in an e-recycler's garbage. There's nothing wrong with it. It was raining that day, so I had to dry it out for a few days. Get a DC adapter for it. Literally nothing wrong with it. And it goes for $500. So, it's amazing, in this country that we'll just throw away stuff like that because there's just so much value. It's just laying around, just in the trash. There's probably tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands worth of stuff in our landfills right now, so you'd be surprised. Alright, last and certainly not least, probably wondering what the handshake is. This one's an easy S tier, and it's just connections in general. I mean, in your time as a reseller, you're going to meet a lot of other people, you're going to meet a lot of other resellers, but in particular, you want to find people that just have a lot of stuff. People that have a lot of stuff and they're trying to get rid of it, and there's plenty of people out there that are like that. I mean, 2 or 3 good connections can seriously take you from a side hustle to a full-time income easily, and this is something that a lot of reselling YouTubers don't like to talk about, because it's their bread and butter. That's how they make a full-time income. They're gonna tell you they go to Goodwill and make a full-time income. It's cap. They're lying. Like, they make their money from connections, and I mean, just like in any other business, valuable connections are everything. So, you know, there's a reason for that old saying. It's not what you know, it's who you know. Maybe a little bit of both, but you can get very far with just good connections. You know, you can make a lot of money. You can make one connection and make over 100,000 a year just off that one connection. So easily, I mean, there's a lot of eBay businesses that they literally rely on a connection. If you want a good example of this, another YouTuber, Paleo Tech, now active Apparel Zone, he was running an entire six-figure electronics store from one e-recycler, and they went out of business, and it completely turned his whole thing upside down. He's into clothing now for that reason. So one connection can seriously give you the keys to the kingdom here, but it's important to have multiple for that reason, because if you have one connection, one source, and then they go out of business, then you're cooked. So anyway, I suppose that concludes our tier list here. We've got a nice distribution here. You know, they're pretty good. And honestly, there's more sourcing. I could have done 10 more sourcing methods in this video, but it's probably already going to be quite long with just these 14 here. So, yeah, it's pretty good. And remember, all this is subjective. Your own experiences might be completely different from mine. This is just what I've noticed after, you know, years of reselling. And I'm not even on top, you know. Like, my eBay store is, I mean, it's alright, you know, it makes me a bit of money. If I went all out on it and I wasn't doing other things, then, you know, I could be doing it as my main thing. You know, there's other resellers out there that know infinitely more than I do. So, you know, I'm not going to act like I'm some kind of guru or whatever, because, you know, I've done what I have, and, you know, I know that, and, you know, I try to learn as much as I can every day. You know, I can learn from you guys. So, yeah, I suppose this will conclude this video. It's my first video on YouTube. So if you guys have any ideas, you know, put them down below. I've got a few other that'll be coming out soon. Primarily make software for reselling, so I can't give all my time to reselling. I kind of drive myself insane just doing reselling all the time, because, you know, it's easy work. You can make a lot of money with it, but it's very active work. It's not, you know, things like social media or software or even investing for that matter. They're a lot more exponential, but I think it's good to diversify and do a lot of things. So that'll be concluding this one for you guys. I got my site linked down below. I won't plug my tools yet, but I do have a lot of reselling tools down there, so I'll probably make another video talking about them, but I just kind of want to dip my toes into the water here, just kind of see what kind of engagement I get on this first one. So yeah, that's about it. See ya.